This video was inspired by a chat I had with a friend in my Discord, discussing portrayals of mental illness in media, which led to me sharing a personal experience, which I'll discuss later. In this video, I will discuss media's romanticization of mental anguish, or turmoil, which I will use as umbrella terms to cover such things as anxiety, depression, drug abuse, self-harm, and suicide. To do so, I will be contrasting Netflix's 13 Reasons Why and HBO's Euphoria, particularly their portrayals of the mental anguish of each show's female lead, Hannah Baker and Rue Bennett, respectively. You have probably come across a number of video essays here on YouTube tearing 13 Reasons Why a new asshole in regard to how it romanticizes mental illness and suicide. However, there is one particular aspect of the framing of Hannah's death that I was surprised to see wasn't discussed that often, and thus I will focus primarily on said aspect. I think it's best we begin by framing what exactly it is we are to discuss, namely establishing what romanticization actually is. The term is thrown out a lot, but can at times be rather vague and quite case specific. The best way I would describe it is when one highlights the more idealized and/or positive aspects of a topic while downplaying or ignoring the literal and/or negative aspects. For example, The Godfather is often considered a romanticization of organized crime. While the characters are of course criminals, the world illustrated is one in which honor, duty, and respect are portrayed as ideals which are held in high regard. Contrast this with, say, The Sopranos, which is a purposefully unromanticized portrayal of the life. While the characters preach these ideals, they are ultimately revealed as hypocrites and degenerates. This example is particularly meta, as many characters in The Sopranos actually romanticize their own lifestyle in the show via its depiction in mob films, including The Godfather. Superhero culture is often cited as a more romanticized version of vigilantism. The vast majority of heroes fight for justice, the burden they undertake to protect others framed as selfless. Contrast this with the characters of Alan Moore's graphic novel Watchmen, where our heroes are fallible, disturbed, insecure individuals with delusions of grandeur. So what specifically do we mean when we discuss the romanticization of mental anguish? In this context, it is not only the accentuation of the positive aspects and downplaying of the negative, but also how certain things are framed in a more silver lining light, if you will. Now, not everything that seemingly downplays or makes light of mental anguish is romanticization. For example, as someone who deals with anxiety and ADD, memes referencing common experiences that those who deal with these conditions go through in a humorous way are meant to act as a catharsis, allowing people to find solace in the fact that others understand what they are going through. This isn't romanticization, as while someone who struggles with panic attacks may find humor in a meme or joke, doing so is not akin to them implying that panic attacks are actually in any way harmless or funny. However, romanticization can be seen in how we may speak of certain conditions in a non-serious or blasé way outside of the context I just discussed. For example, if someone who does not have ADHD, or even if they do, says something like, "Oh, I couldn't pay attention during that boring lecture, I am such an ADHD case." While this person may not mean harm, comments like this may lead to people thinking of ADHD as a minor annoyance or quirk, as opposed to the potentially life-altering condition it truly may be. But I would argue the most pressing danger of the romanticization of mental anguish is when individuals begin to see their turmoil as less of an ailment and more of as an intrinsic part of their personality, something that makes them unique or above others. Tumblr culture is often criticized for perpetuating this particular aesthetic, if you will, evoking a glamorized perception of mental anguish. Having anxiety is seen as trendy, suffering from depression signifies you are above it all, if you will, or how mental anguish is a sign of brilliance, a la the tortured artist trope. Vincent van Gogh suffered from psychosis, which allowed him to create beautiful art. Ian Curtis dealt with epilepsy and depression, which led to him turning his pain into incredible music. We will get to the massive logical fallacy present in these examples later, but you can see how harmful the romanticization of mental anguish can be. It is one thing to not feel ashamed of your turmoil, it is another to consider it something valuable, or that makes you stylish, or as a prerequisite for achieving greatness. This was one of the main things 13 Reasons Why was criticized for. I mean, it was criticized for a lot. Like, it was a train wreck from so many angles. I am solely focusing on Hannah's arc in Season 1 in this video, as otherwise it would be Lord knows how long. But specifically because instead of being framed as a distraught young woman who desperately needs psychological intervention, Hannah is often framed as if she has a certain wisdom that makes her unable to function in such a cruel, cruel world. And through her death, those around her learn to not take their lives for granted. Her recordings are played throughout the show, narrating the events as if she's a teaching angel whose suicide will make the other characters see the error of their ways. Contrast Hannah's framing with Rue's in Euphoria. While the show does seem, at first glance, to be emulative of the Tumblr aesthetic I spoke of, with the scenes portraying Rue's drug use being heavily stylized, this is underscored by the show portraying the come down as harsh and brutal. While it may seem to glamorize drugs, when juxtaposed with scenes of Rue spiraling downward or going through withdrawal, you understand what the show is trying to communicate. The stylized nature of Rue's drug use is meant to depict what it is like for Rue, how it makes everything wonderful but is also fleeting. The beauty of her drug-induced perception contrasted with stark, sobering reality. While Rue initially may come off as a person who is simply too complex for this world, the show goes to great lengths to break that facade, showing that Rue herself is romanticizing her own anguish, to conceal the fact that in reality she is scared, lost, and desperately in need of help to find her way through the dark. 13 Reasons Why frames Hannah's mental turmoil as something that puts Hannah above those around her, giving her an insight that the other characters only achieve after her death, while Euphoria depicts Rue's turmoil as simply and accurately a destructive force that is ruining her life and relationships. I would argue this is a clear example of 13 Reasons Why romanticizing mental turmoil, while Euphoria subverts this trope. But now I want to talk about the scene, if you will, present in both shows. And by that I mean the scene where we finally see the culmination of each character's inner turmoil reaching its boiling point. In 13 Reasons Why, this is clearly the scene where Hannah ends her life. And in Euphoria, the scene where Rue relapses at the end of the season, which is preceded by showing how her drug abuse has led to her family tearing apart. I referred to both of these as the scene, as it is sort of a staple in addiction mental illness stories, where regardless of how glamorized said addiction or illness may seem, any notion of that being the case is thrown out the window. I was shocked upon learning that back in 1996, Trainspotting, a film that follows a group of Scottish heroin addicts, was accused of glorifying heroin use by many. I suppose they were in the bathroom during the scene where one of the characters screams in agony after discovering her infant child has died due to neglect, a scene that has been seared into my mind since the first time I saw it. Now, as some of you may know, the actual scene where Hannah commits suicide was removed from Netflix. On one hand, I would argue removing the scene undermines the show's claim that it in no way means to romanticize suicide. While the scene is perhaps one of the most graphically disturbing scenes I have ever seen, it seems as though this was by design, to show just how horrific and decidedly unromantic the act of suicide truly is. This may be in part why the showrunners decided to alter Hannah's method of suicide. Hannah cuts her wrists in the show, whereas she overdoses on sleeping pills in the novel. But on the other hand, I understand the decision, as many mental health professionals feared that the graphic nature of the scene may be too distressing for those who struggle with suicidal thoughts. There is an excellent video on this topic from YouTuber Hello Future Me in regard to how creators need to be wary when portraying aspects of mental illness, as certain elements may play differently for those who do and do not struggle with mental anguish. Some professionals were fearful that the scene may even inspire copycat suicides, something that was widely reported as taking place, although after looking into this, wasn't as well founded as word of mouth via social media made it seem. In addition to this, the scene where Hannah's mother and father find Hannah, although also edited to make it slightly less graphic, which features their horrified reaction, serves the same purpose. But in any case, you may be a bit confused as to what I am getting at. Well, despite both 13 Reasons Why and Euphoria featuring a scene where the horrifying reality of each character's mental anguish is expressed, thus making it appear as if each show is not intending to glorify, but to warn or deter, it is the depicted aftermath of Hannah's suicide in 13 Reasons Why that is, in my opinion, where it commits its most heinous offense. And in order to allow you to understand why this particular aspect was so egregious in my eyes, I would like to share a personal experience with you. I felt a bit odd trying to edit anything over this part, so if you don't mind, I am just gonna put a black screen. When I was a kid growing up in the suburbs of Boston, I had a family friend. Let's call him Sam. Sam was a few years older than me. We only saw each other a few times a year, but I always got a kick out of hanging out with him. Him being the one who showed me the Boondock Saints and Grand Theft Auto 3 for the first time. Perhaps not the best influence in my mother's eyes, but I thought he was wicked cool. As we got older, we saw each other less and less. I eventually moved to Chicago for school. A few years later, I learned that Sam had become addicted to heroin. Sometime after, I was relieved to hear Sam was able to get clean and was living back home with his parents. One day, Sam's mother returned home and found Sam dead on his bedroom floor as a result of a heroin overdose, his first hit upon relapsing. When I learned of the news, I was surprised at how much it affected me, as I had not even spoken to Sam in years. At the time, I myself, due to some personal struggles, was dulling the pain with drug use of my own, although nothing as extreme as heroin. The detail of his mother being the one who found him haunts me to this day. There are times when I think about what would happen if, say, I had ended up moving on to a substance with a higher risk of addiction and death. What would happen if I were to overdose? How my roommate at the time would have reacted upon finding me? How my mother would have reacted upon getting that phone call? Would my mother have to identify my body? Would she have to break the news every time she got a call from a friend who didn't know of my fate and asked her how I was doing? It was the thought of the aftermath that stuck with me. Perhaps looking back, I wonder if his passing was in some way a factor in convincing me to eventually seek help myself in the form of therapy and medication. Perhaps, despite his death being horribly tragic, the fact that it led to me reevaluating my own life was perhaps a silver lining, if you will. In 13 Reasons Why, we see the fallout of Hannah's death and how those closest to her react, particularly Clay, which culminates in the finale where Clay states that he and others could have stopped Hannah's suicide if only they had done something differently, said the right thing, been there at the right moment, and though he himself was not there for Hannah through her death, he now sees that he can be there for someone else. Even if you argue that Hannah is not meant to be framed as a wise angel or teacher, and that she was simply a mentally distraught young woman, her death in and of itself is framed as something that leads to those around her coming to learn the error of their ways, at least to some extent. In the end, her death still has meaning, if you will. But here we come to the fallacy I spoke of earlier. When we as humans are faced with something traumatic, horrifying, or nonsensical, we have the tendency to try and find meaning within it, saying it happened for a reason, whether it was because something wasn't done or said, or that despite one life being lost, it may lead to more being saved in the future. However, in doing so, I would argue, whether or not we mean to, we are to some extent assigning value to what is a pointless, senseless, meaningless act. We can say that Vincent van Gogh's pain resulted in some of the most beautiful art known to man, but what if in actuality, his pain robbed the world of the beautiful art he would have gone on to make had he lived a full life? We can say Ian Curtis's struggle with depression led to incredible music, but what if his depression deprived the earth of so much more incredible music he would go on to make? In the case of Sam's story, at first I thought that perhaps his death led to me reevaluating my own life and dependence, but it was only later that I realized that I was simply trying to add some sense to something that in reality was nonsensical, and by doing so, I was inadvertently giving value to something that didn't hold nor deserve said value. To even muse that perhaps the death of another person could hold a silver lining is to an extent giving it credit for something it had nothing to do with, in addition to the fact that I may have been, as I mentioned before was an aspect of romanticization itself, downplaying the negatives. Those who say that Vincent van Gogh's pain is what led to his art are downplaying the years and years and years of turmoil Vincent suffered through, or perhaps how Vincent's mother would feel every time she looked upon the self-portrait he painted for her as a birthday present, less than a year before his death, which he made to assure her he was doing well. Those who say Ian Curtis's struggle is what led to his incredible music downplay the horror of his widow Deborah finding Ian that morning, or how his daughter Natalie was left without her father. In my case, I felt quite ashamed after realizing that trying to assign meaning to Sam's death was in a way simply for my own peace of mind, and I didn't take into account the effects it had on his mother, father, sister, and those with whom he was close. Even if one's tragic loss of life could be said to possibly have a sliver of a silver lining, it would be overwhelmingly eclipsed by heartache and pain. In 13 Reasons Why, even though the show does to some extent show the pain Hannah's death results in, the more redemptive tone of the ending seems to imply it wasn't all that bad, that Hannah's death had some silver lining, which is simply an egregious message to send in a show that aims to highlight the realities of mental illness and suicide. As study after study after study shows, this simply is in no way indicative of reality. And yet in Euphoria, we see this reality demonstrated to perfection. Rue's turmoil is not framed as meaningful or beautiful or something that will lead to a path to redemption for those around her. It is portrayed as what it truly is: meaningless, horrific, and something that will only cause pain for those whom she believes her death will alleviate of their burden. That is not to say I think Euphoria is meant to make those who suffer from mental turmoil or addiction feel guilty. This is counterproductive, as many who suffer from said turmoil feel as though they are a burden to those around them. But there is something to be said about destroying the myth that the lives of their loved ones will be in any way better once they are gone. A myth that, for all of its preaching and aggrandizing, 13 Reasons Why ends up perpetuating by the end of the first season. In the end, it is not Hannah herself, the person she was, what she meant to those around her, who is the focus, the subject of this story, but her meaningless, senseless, tragic death. I am not saying that those who try to find meaning or sense in a tragedy are doing so with ill intent. They are simply trying to process their grief. But we must ensure the idea that a tragedy is not given any sort of sense or meaning or value, as it may lead to dire consequences. In 2014, transgender teenager Leila Alcorn ended her life, leaving a request that her death would result in attention being given to the many trans people who end up taking their own lives, that it would lead to something being done, that her death would mean something. Following her passing and the resulting public outcry, Leila's Law, a petition for the banning of conversion therapy in the USA that received over 300,000 signatures, was cited as a factor that led to the city of Cincinnati and several other cities across the state of Ohio doing so. Following the ban, Cincinnati council member Chris Seelbach stated, "She challenged us to make her death matter, and we're doing just that." But once again, we come upon the same fallacy. The incredible strides that were made in the state of Ohio that have surely helped other LGBTQ youth should not be attributed to Leila's tragic passing, but Leila herself. Leila's passing itself was a senseless tragedy. We can discuss the more systemic barriers that led to Leila and others like her feeling as though there was no hope, but we can do so without assigning value to their pain and turmoil. It was Leila herself that led to others like her being saved and being given help, and she as a person should be given the credit. To inadvertently assign meaning to a life only after it has ended, I would say seems to be indicative of something terribly wrong in how we discuss these issues. To even suggest Leila's passing had any sort of value is to not only imply that one's pain is what holds meaning, as opposed to them as an individual, but also casting a shadow over all the good Leila may have gone on to do, the many more lives she would have gone on to make better and save throughout her life, were she still with us today. In the cases of Leila, Vincent, and Ian, they left such an impact on this world despite their pain, not because of it. In the case of Sam, it was only later that I realized that it wasn't his death that held meaning to me, but who he was as a person, as it was who he was that led to his departure from this world, leaving such a pain and absence for all of those who knew him. I would like to leave you with Hannah Gadsby's closing remarks from her Netflix special Nanette, in which she also speaks of the fallacy I have discussed in this video, specifically in relation to the death of Vincent van Gogh and the art he created, namely his compositions known as the sunflowers.
Do you know why we have the sunflowers? It's not because Vincent van Gogh suffered. It's because Vincent van Gogh had a brother who loved him. Through all the pain, he had a tether, a connection to the world. And that is the focus of the story we need.